We begin with a story that could shake your faith in the safety of the food that you serve your family. Now, you know about E. coli bacteria and how it can make you sick if you eat the wrong undercooked hamburger. But did you know that also E. coli can show up on fruits and vegetables, and that eating contaminated produce can make you and your family deathly ill?
Well, it seems that a virulent new strain of E. coli has already shown up on dinner tables in this country. The experts say that the problem begins on some farms where the food is grown. So what can you do to protect your family? Tonight, Lynn Sure has some very important information that you won't want to miss.
For most kids, this is just a routine kitchen chore, helping Mom wash the salad.
We're making lettuce. Good lettuce.
But for 5-year-old Haley Bernstein of Wilton, Connecticut, it is a matter of life and death. Back in June of 1996, Haley, then 3, and her older sister, Chelsea, came down with what seemed to be terrible stomach aches. After several days of bloody diarrhea and nonstop crying, their parents took them to the hospital. The doctors took a stool culture and said it was the bacteria E. coli.
My first reaction was, I'm going to lose them both. You don't get over E. coli. You really don't survive that.
Why is it that the term E. coli made you so upset?
Because E. coli equals death. And in my head, that's what it equaled.
That was certainly the image of E. coli when it made headlines a few years ago, turning up in hamburgers at Jack in the Box restaurants in Washington State. It caused the deaths of 4 children. Up to now, E. coli has usually been associated with meat contaminated by cow feces.
What we all identified E. coli with, certainly at that period, was hamburgers. Had the girls had hamburgers?
Well, I had taken them for fast food, and so I immediately connected the two.
But was it hamburgers?
No, it wasn't, and I was shocked, beyond shocked, when we found out what it was.
What it was lettuce, an innocent-looking mix of baby greens called mesclun salad, found in nearly every fashionable grocery store. And what had poisoned it was the same bacteria found in the hamburgers, E. coli. Haley's sister Chelsea came down with a mild set of symptoms and went home the same day. But Haley developed the worst possible reaction, a condition called hemolytic uremic syndrome. Her kidneys simply shut down. She was put on a ventilator, transfused, fed through a tube, came down with pneumonia, lung disease, and congestive heart failure. After 2 terrifying months in the hospital, the nightmare got unimaginably worse.
She had a bleed on the left side of her head that was the size of a tennis ball. That was...
Required brain surgery.
6 hours worth of surgery.
Brain surgery?
Yeah. You're talking a perfectly healthy, normal, great kid who just ate some lettuce.
The brain surgery left Haley's eyesight permanently damaged. She became diabetic, and there were times when her parents thought she would die. But finally, miraculously, the day came when she was discharged.
What was the worst moment for you while all this was going on?
I think the most frightening time was the day they came in and said that we could take her home. That was the most frightening day for me.
Why?
Sorry.
You'd been through 14 and a half weeks of fear and a little hope and then more fear, and now you got to bring her home. Why was that scary?
Because I was responsible for her. She was so sick. And we came home, she was on 10 or 11 medications. Mm-hmm. It took us 2.5 hours to give her the medications.
Twice a day.
Twice a day.
Haley and her sister were not alone. Investigators say, in all, 61 people in Connecticut and Illinois got sick from the same batch of lettuce. Tammy Ardema from St. Charles, Illinois, suffered for days before she drove herself to the emergency room.
The pain was horrible. They pumped me with antibiotics, very strong ones, and I was there for about 4 hours.
Tammy was lucky. Adults just get sick. For children, the elderly, and people with compromised immune systems, it is potentially lethal. How did lettuce become so dangerous? Investigators say it's just a matter of connecting the dots at this small farm in the heart of California lettuce country. They say the cows grazed back over there, right next to where the lettuce was washed, which is right back in here. So it's entirely possible that bits of cow feces containing the bacteria were tracked into the shed or seeped into the water supply. An FDA inspector at this makeshift lettuce grower, Fancy Cut Farms, found a list of egregious violations. Employees used bare hands. The lettuce was transported in dirty, reused boxes. And well water next to the cattle was not treated, filtered, or chlorinated. Just before the outbreak, Fancy Cut's filter system got clogged. And government inspectors say these workers may have been triple washing the lettuce with dirty water. We invited Lori Durand, a food safety activist, to visit Fancy Cut Farms with us. Although shut down since January and ravaged by a local flood, it still bore the telltale remnants of a deficient packing plant. Lori, when you look at this operation, what do you see?
Well, in a perfect situation, I think what you want is processing that looks like your kitchen. You don't want a processing area that looks like a shed. You want a processing area that is enclosed, keeps the animals, birds, insects out.
In other words, because it's so open, anything could walk in there.
Yes, grow in there, grow on the ceilings, grow on the walls. Yes, exactly.
Give me a gut reaction to what you see as you stand here.
Revolting.
Revolting. The owner of Fancy Cut Farms, Robert Chavez, has denied he was to blame for the outbreak, but he refused to speak with 2020. And according to FDA documents, he was uncooperative with the agency during an inspection because he was too busy and repeatedly didn't return the inspector's calls. What really upsets food safety activists like Durand is that the conditions at Fancy Cut are not unique. From what you know, Lori, is this what was a farm here? Is this unusual, or is this something that happens in other places too?
Well, it's my understanding that in that farm, they're packing in an animal facility with manure in piles around where they're packing.
We took a look at the neighboring farm, which was recently used to pack broccoli and persimmons. And what we found didn't look like any kitchen where we would eat.
I believe this used to be a cow shed, because this is the place where a cow would normally put its head to be fed on the other side of this particular structure.
So these would be the troughs, the feeding troughs over here.
I believe so.
Okay.
And then this detritus, which I'm reluctant to touch with my hands, represents cow manure and feces otherwise from animals.
These kinds of conditions have led to 6 known cases of E. coli contamination in lettuce in the past few years. There were 2 cases from alfalfa sprouts just last June. And in July of 1996 in Japan, E. coli in radish sprouts put thousands of people in the hospital, them school children. It's not just salad fixings. Other foods that are eaten raw can also transmit the bacteria. In 1996, after drinking unpasteurized Odwalla apple juice, 70 people, mostly children, were infected with E. coli, including Lori Durand's daughter, Annie.
It was absolutely devastating because, first of all, you try to protect your child from absolutely everything horrible that could happen. And then you find that by giving them something that you think is healthy, you've actually possibly killed them.
Did it ever occur to you that apple juice could do this to your daughter?
Oh, never. I mean, I would have never thought that there were bacteria that were as life-threatening as E. coli 0157H7. And you know, 20 years ago when I took biology, this organism wasn't identified. People didn't know about it.
While E. coli has been around for millennia, this virulent new mutation called 0157H7 was only discovered in the early 1980s. Dr. Ross Davidson is a microbiologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. After 2 E. coli outbreaks from lettuce in Canada last year, he decided to investigate. Using blue dye to simulate E. coli-tainted water, he showed us how easily it can permeate an entire head of lettuce.
Lettuce is very porous. It's composed almost entirely of water, so there's no barrier to stop E. coli from getting access to the inside. And that's why it's important to thoroughly wash both the outside and the inside leaves.
Later, he sprayed the lettuce with bacteria and performed an experiment to demonstrate whether washing would completely eliminate the germs.
The first plate here shows you how much E. coli bacteria you might expect to find on the outer leaves prior to washing.
Then he showed us how much E. coli is left even after a thorough washing. 2 cells in this case.
You can't completely eliminate the risk, but you can certainly reduce it.
Scientists say it can take as few as 1 to 10 cells of this new strain of E. coli to make you sick.
Knowing what this researcher has done, this scientist in Toronto, does that put even more pressure on the FDA as far as you're concerned?
Absolutely. It cannot get to our homes, and we cannot be expected to eliminate a biohazard from our kitchens.
The FDA is responsible for making sure we don't have to. But Joe Levitt, who runs the agency's Center for Food Safety, says scientists are still trying to figure out how.
There already exist specific mandatory guidelines, rules for meat, for milk, for seafood. Why not for produce, something we eat raw?
Right now, what we feel is with fresh fruits and vegetables, the amount of information we have is appropriate for guidance. What we're lacking is having a good, clear sense of exactly what steps are going to give the level of assurance that a mandatory program we would want to achieve.
In other words, on lettuce farms like this, farmers should follow what the FDA says, but they don't have to.
There is a way to protect our food supply, and it's not nearly as complicated as you might think. It doesn't require fancy machines or high technology or even very much money at all.
Here at McAfee Apple Gardens in Fresno, California, Mark McAfee has helped revive the reputation of Odwalla, who made the contaminated apple juice. His orchard is a leader in safety standards, with some common sense and inexpensive ideas, like testing his water for purity, enforcing strict hand-washing rules by having wash stations nearby, plus this ingenious device.
Now, this is just a ladder, right? Every farm has a picking ladder.
This is a standard picking ladder used in the harvest of fruit in the central San Joaquin Valley.
Okay, so what's the big deal about your version of this ladder?
We don't touch the orange spaces. When you touch the orange space, you got to go wash your hands again.
Oops. But I'm not picking apples, so
That's
it's okay, right?
We modified these ladders so that you don't have to touch where the bacteria is, where your feet come in contact with this device at any time during the day.
So in other words, if you happen to have tracked some animal feces or whatever, and you step on this, you would get it in your hands.
You get it on your hand and on the fruit all day long.
But McAfee says the problem is he's one of the only ones taking these steps.
You see people using methods not as stringent as the methods you're using and not as common sense. Tell me what you feel in your gut.
They just don't know. I've sat in rooms where farmers say, you know, we've done this for 50 years this way. And I'm not going to call them ignorant. These are very bright, very hardworking people. But emerging pathogens are not the same guys we were dealing with 15, 20 years ago. And with that thought in mind, we have to evolve in our thought processes as well.
Despite McAfee's assessment, our nation's fresh produce has been overwhelmingly safe. And the big lettuce producers like Fresh Express have never been linked to an E. coli outbreak. They spend millions of dollars on safety standards. The cases we've shown you are rare. But as long as there's the potential of even one contaminated leaf of lettuce, Haley's mother Rita isn't going to be taking any chances.
I separate each leaf. I do the whole head.
When she serves lettuce, it takes her a good half hour just to wash and, she hopes, disinfect the leaves.
Okay, so now what?
So what I do, once they're all separated and everything, I spray them.
This is really a scientific process for you.
I guess for some people this is a big deal. You know, for me it's just not. I mean, it's just, I'm washing it and I want to, especially lettuce.
Haley, do you remember when you were sick?
Yeah, something was on the lettuce. It was coli.
So, Haley, do you eat lettuce now?
Yeah, this is good lettuce now, and this is good water.
Good water, right?
Good water, and it's not bad water.
We really came so close to losing her so many times. E. coli 0157H7 is something that did not exist when we were younger. The world is different now, and we have to treat the food we eat differently now, too.
Now, we don't want to scare you into not eating fresh fruits and vegetables. The experts say that nearly all our food is safe. But with this new strain of E. coli out there, it's more important than ever to thoroughly wash everything you eat. You'll reduce the risk greatly.
And that means even if it comes in a package and says that it's been triple washed, you wash it, because after what we've seen, you can't be too careful.